I grew up like any normal kid. My father was a pilot. My mother was a businesswoman. I grew up in Westlands. My first school was in Consolata. And this is in the 70s. Later on, moved to Nairobi Primary. By the age of 13, after my CPE, I had a motorbike. I had a sports motorbike. By the time other kids were getting bicycles, I had a sports bike. I'm a guy who's seen a good life. But ultimately, in the end, I was in the streets. So how does a child brought up in privilege eventually degenerate into living on the streets? That is the story I want to share with you today. I'm Solomon Kilanga. I'm an author. I've authored a book called Chokora, My Life in Addiction. I'm a team leader at an organization called GLC, where we rescue and rehabilitate adult men living on the streets. I want to demystify and hopefully remove the stigma that is associated to adult males living in the streets. Yeah, those guys you pass kila siku, they are just, society derogatively calls them chokoras. 2, I want to speak to every Kenyan male, young and old, those that I see outside there, trying to seek solace in alcohol and drugs. Because there are no answers there. It may look like it provides temporary solutions, but believe me, the only thing that it will cause is massive pain, as will be evidenced in my story. But I also hope that this story, anybody who listens to me, anybody who's listening right now, and is going through pain, will come to realize at the end that it does not matter who caused the wound that you're suffering from. The wound is yours. Doesn't matter. Quit the blame game. Whether it was parents, whether it was who, just quit the blame game, because the wound is yours and you have to deal with it. So basically, yeah, those are the things that I hope to achieve through telling of this story. Now let me go to my story. It's because of circumstances and events that happened. I've led a very interesting life. Because other than those positive things I said, I am also a recovering alcoholic and a one-time homeless street man. Those guys that society calls chokoras, I have lived as one of them. And I want to point out to you that this can happen to anybody. Because first of all, let's go back to my background. I grew up like any normal kid. My father was a pilot. My mother was a businesswoman. I grew up in Westlands. My first school was in Consolata. And this is in the 70s. Later on, moved to Nairobi Primary. By the age of 13, after my CPE, I had a motorbike. I had a sports motorbike. By the time other kids were getting bicycles, I had a sports bike. I'm a guy who's seen a good life. But ultimately, in the end, I was in the streets. I also lived in the streets. I began drinking at 13. By 18, I was an addict. By 31, I was living in the streets. I didn't even go to the streets as a chokora. These total chokoras, you see. I went there at the age of 31, having lived a successful life. So how does a child brought up in privilege eventually degenerate into living on the streets? That is the story I want to share with you today. And the pain and misery that goes on in the streets, so that you may better understand that street community. At the age of 13, I never drank in my life. But at the age of 13, we were a bunch of us, just a few schoolboys. Those days, it was days of Nairobi Show. We had Nairobi Showground, and, we we're just about to get to 13. We've just finished our standard 7, our CPE. We're beginning to feel mature. We're beginning to feel like we're going to be men now. And so one of us dares the others, let's have a drink. And we say, okay. Of course, we're too young even to go and order for ourselves the alcohol, so we get the older brother of a friend of ours to order for us. And this guy brings us a crate of beer. We sit somewhere condo, he brings us a packet of cigarettes, and we are kids by now. We've not drunk before, but since the bet is on, we fungu our drinks. And of course, we look at each other as we take our first sips. Then you bring the cigarettes in and you take a puff of smoke, you cough almost your entire lungs out. But again, you're trying to be a man. Anyway, long story short, I don't even think we drank that much. Probably only 3 beers. And those were those 2 small beers of Kitambo, they're called to Tusker exports. So we drank only about 3 beers. But I'll tell you this. When the effect of that alcohol came, the feeling I got was a feeling of invincibility. That is the only word I can use to describe the feeling I got. For the first time in my life, I felt I loved myself. For the first time in my life, I had a heightened sense of self-esteem. For the first time in my life, I felt I could be anything. I was lovable. And that was the feeling I would chase until it landed me in the streets. That false sense of joy or self-esteem and other things that I did not have in me, that alcohol gave me, became the thing I would chase until I lived in the streets. Let's take a look at that picture. Here is a 13-year-old kid, posh school, lived in posh neighborhoods. Parents are well off. Why would a 13-year-old at that stage have such a low sense of self-esteem that they would need a drug, alcohol or any other drug, to make them feel lovable? That is something we will come back to, because it is happening in many households today. Our youth are getting lost, and from the outside society we keep on saying, what haven't we done for them? We have paid school fees, they're in expensive schools, they're in this, they're in that, they're in this, we are doing this, that, the other. Parents, money does not answer everything. But we will get back to that. Now 13 guys are getting bicycles, I got a motorcycle. Now you have a motorbike. First of all, I didn't like hanging out with my age mates. 13-year-olds seemed a bit kiddish to me at the time. So I wanted to hang out with guys who were older. And the older guys also saw in me, a source of transport. Now you have a motorbike. These guys want to go see their girlfriends, they want to go to drink or stuff like that. You'll use your motorbike. So we became friends, began to hang out with older guys. Remember, older guys had good access to money and alcohol. So me when my pocket money runs out, these guys always have money. So now from one, you are drinking. From one, it's you've upped your life. Your girlfriends are from 2, from 3 now, and you think you're living a pretty good life. By Form 2, second term, I was expelled from school. By then I was in Upper Hill. I was expelled, not suspended, expelled. Because of my non-attendance, my lateness, my what, the insubordination, you name it all, And when I was expelled in Form 2, Form 2 second term, I never let my parents know. I didn't tell them. What was I going to tell them? I had freedom. Because for me, where we lived, other than the main house, there was an attached servants' quarters outside. It's a self-contained thing. So our house help didn't live in the servant quarters. They lived in the house. I lived in the SQ. Because now I'm trying to be given, think now you're in secondary, but now some responsibility than any. Now, and of course, you have a stone wall around the compound and one common gate, so your parents think they're in control. Nobody knows your timings, your movements. You will see your parents just once in a while. You don't have to see them daily. And second term went. Third term of Form 2, nobody still knew that I had been kicked out. And for the entire third term of Form 2, I continued faking like I was going to school. But now even I was getting worried. Hey, now it's coming to Form 3 when I was starting to wonder, what will happen when we go to the next class? I can't keep on not being in school. Luckily, my father found out. And I don't know how he found out. But one day he just came to me and he told me, hey, we're going on a trip somewhere. He didn't make noise. He didn't do anything rash. He just came and told me, we're going on a trip. I said, okay. And, anything was better than the situation that I was in. So next day, go to Isili, we catch some old 404s and some old matatus 404s, 504s that used to take guys to Isiolo. So we are on this journey for 2-3 hours, wondering where you are going. By then I was not told where I'm going, I was just told we're going on safari. And eventually at the end of that safari, so you land in Isiolo, the hottest place I've ever been in. Hey, you land there, you get there in the afternoon. It's like a hot place, it was the hottest place I knew in Kenya. Well, I'd ever been to in Kenya. We sleep over, and the next day, we go to what was then called the barrier. Now, at that time, Isiolo, from Isiolo to Marsabit, there was no tarmac. Those were the 80s. These are days there was the shifter bandits and stuff. So lorries would line up there, lorries taking stuff to Marsabit, Moyale, and beyond. They would line up there. And, they have to have a car escort of administration police. So we get on these lorries. And for the those days, Marsabit, you left Isiolo at 11, about 10 in the morning or 11 there, you get to Marsabit at about 11 or midnight. So when we got to Marsabit, it was dark. We just went to a friend of my father's place and we spent the night. But now next day, you come out to see the town and you are taken to see the school. And I can tell you the moment I saw Marsabit town, I hated it. I'm being taken to a school. I'm actually shown the school. But this is a school in a town that looks like a scene from a bad Western movie. Those two one-horse towns. Marsabit was remote. Marsabit was not all right, it was like a remote place. And me, basically, I decided this would be a one-stop drinking center, and that's it. I was not coming here to study. By the way, over the next 2 years, it was just a drinking place. But now into the mix, I found Mira. I found there's some good changa huko, ukienda Manyata za Waborana huko in Marsabit, the two hills there, you find some very good changa. So let's just put it this way. I was lucky that after 2 years in Marsabit, I didn't extremely ruin my life, but when I came out of there, I was an alcoholic. I was dependent on alcohol. Came back to Nairobi, went to a college here, studied clearing and forwarding and some business administration. There used to be a college at Imenti House called Universal College in those days. Went studied clearing and forwarding, business administration. As soon as the clearing and forwarding I was done with, I quickly went and interned for a job. In a few months, I knew my way around and I could begin to make money. So now begins the story of now you are making money. But my only plan as a youth was this. Make money, drink. Make money, have more fun. Make money, drink again ad infinitum. And I didn't have a major plan. I didn't have a plan about creating wealth. I didn't have a plan for that kind of thing. And over the next few years, my life just kept on being ruined more and more. What I thought was fun. I was a functioning alcoholic. I would drink up to 5 in the morning and go and do my shughlis, then go back to the bar in the evening. Alcohol never interfered with the ability to be able to go out and make something, some more money, so that you can come and drink some more alcohol. So in my own words, I would say I was a functional alcoholic, like so many are today. And maybe my story may have just ended there as a functional alcoholic, but it didn't. So why do you need tafadhali bana, siwachane na hii kitu, you know, that kind of thing. You know, because the people who see you drinking, alcohol is viewed, or drugs, they are viewed in two different ways. There's the way the person who is seeing you consume it is viewing it. They are seeing what it is doing to you, the dents, all that they see it do to you. But you are not seeing it from that way. You are seeing, you the user are seeing what it does for you. For you, the self-esteem, the feeling of loving yourself, the feeling of being worthy. That is what it is doing for you. And that is why we look at this thing in two different ways. So people keep on insisting, and you keep on isolating people. Well, I was arrogant, So one of the things I would ask people is, am I drinking your money? Yes, nitakuuliza ndataka pesa yako ya kukunywa uninyime. So you isolate people. Keep on isolating people until you are eventually left with only a small group of friends. And these guys you are left with are the guys that you drink with. Now, these guys, you don't know them beyond, you don't know their houses, you don't know where they live. Basically, what you do is you meet up in the bars with these guys. You have no other social life with them. But every evening or every time you go to a bar, these are the guys you meet, you buy each other a few rounds, you commiserate in your misery together there. Of course, at that time you don't know it's misery. At that time you are thinking it's great joy you are having over there. And each of you leaves. If one guy doesn't come tomorrow, nobody finds out where they went. Another miserable soul will join you there. Now I can call them miserable souls. At that time I thought it was a great thing to have and be doing with these guys. But time goes on. You have isolated everyone who loved you. You have put everyone who cared for you is out of your life. In this crowd that you're in, you share nothing in common. And now you start getting lonely. Now you realize that you're actually lonely in that crowd. Now you start searching for me, I started searching. I wanted somebody to love me. And this thought of finding somebody who would love me unconditionally, slowly from a thought began to become an obsession. And every day I dwelt on it, it became stronger. Until in my, I'll say, crazed alcoholic mind of the time, I clearly decided that the only person who could love me unconditionally would be my own child. And that's because I thought of a son. Now, alcoholics, we can be very selfish. I decided I want a child. Because to your child, you are daddy. To your child, you're not the loser society is saying you are. To your child, you're not the alcoholic that that people are saying you are. To your child, you are simply daddy and that kid loves you. But here is the other side. I'm not thinking what I can do for this child. I'm just thinking what this child can do for me. But now again, you look at the logistics and you realize you're not amoeba. And a woman is necessary for the mix. And so I went in search, you have to marry. So I went in search of a woman. But this was not anything to do with love issues. If I had known, I would probably never have taken that direction. You see, I really want this story to point out that there are many places in life where I could have gotten help. There are many places in life where I might have changed my direction. from where it is now heading. But now this was actually a stage. The step I was taking would actually be a step that would lead me closer to going to become a street person. So now that I have to find a woman, I decided, fine, the women we drank with, my friend, you don't marry those ones. The women you hang around in bars with, you don't marry those ones. This is the story of the pot calling the kettle black. Lakini, for one thing for sure, the women you drink with in bars and hang around with in bars, at most, they would be for temporary relief or to black out reality for a short while, but not marriage material. It's always been said, and even then it was said, good girls come from church. So why do you go looking for a wife? Man? I went to church to look for a wife. Once I went to a church where I thought, get a proper wife, born again Christian and all. Now, the thing is, and I will mention this for the viewers so that people realize this. Churches are the places where people are most vulnerable. Because I can walk up to you in a church, and so long as I'm within the church compound, I can strike up a conversation with anyone. If I can say, speak the way they are all speaking there, everyone will embrace me. You hug strangers in churches, people you wouldn't talk to outside there. So that's a place where people are vulnerable. And that's why I decided I'll go look for a wife. So now I'm a guy who's not shy. I don't lack things to say. And so when I went looking for a wife, I went to the church, I scanned, I quickly identified my target, and got a conversation going later on. Of course, you're not going to immediately engage, but you're in a church. So you talk about the church, the building, what the sermon was like and stuff like that. But then you turn this conversation to a hypothetical situation whereby if we were suited for each other, how long would it take? And so the girl gives me an answer, the pastor, the blessings, I don't know what. And I'm thinking, man, time frame. With all that, it might take a year. I walked out of the church. 1 year. I wanted to be married like last week. Why would I wait around for 1 year? And so began the next Sunday, went to another church, no success. But I'll tell you this. If you look for something in this world, good or bad, but you search for it hard enough and with all your heart, you're going to find it. One day on a Sunday, I was coming back home, the compound where I lived, at the gate, I meet this girl, and she's coming out of the compound, and I'm going in. I say, hi, why don't you come in for a cup of tea? And she says, okay. So we go in. This is about 4 o'clock. In 3 hours, by 7 o'clock, we had courted, we had married, we had consummated the marriage, and she was moving in 3 hours later. And for me, the things one does in desperation. For me, I said, hallelujah, the heavens have blessed me. The universe has acceded to what I wanted. Because I had wanted this. I just wanted this vessel. But I never asked myself, how desperate could she have been in 3 hours to enter into this relationship and come and stay with a man within 3 hours? So 1 year down the road, one day, at Nyamakema. At that time, we were doing some electronics business at Nyamakema area. And I'm thinking, I think I've got money. Why don't I just go home? Surprise this girl, take out with her son. We've never even gone out. And I go home. It's Sato. I get home about 1 o'clock. So I go into my place. And when I open the sitting room door, it's open. I go, I hear noises in the bedroom, I open the bedroom door, and there in front of me is my so-called wife naked in bed at 1 p.m. with another guy having sex. I just told you that I'm a guy who never lacks words. That day I lacked. There was nothing to say. There are things you just look at, you can't comprehend it. It's not so much the issue of that there was any love there. It's just that thing of seeing you had built around a certain plan for a whole year, it has just crumbled down. By the time they realized I was there and got up to look at me, there was nothing I could say, and I walked out. Went to the local bar, drank there, came back in the evening. By evening, they were gone. Now, in all my time that we lived around there, I'd never drunk in the local bars. But now for the next 3 days, I didn't have the will even to go to town. So I hung around the local bars drinking. And let me tell you something. If there's something bad happening in your life, everybody spoke where you knows it. Where I went drinking, I got drunk and started sharing with another guy in the bar. And then the guy tells me, kwani haujui? And everyone knows there, but what is happening, that this woman and the guy I found her in bed with, these guys have been on and off for several years. Even he is the father of that child. You know those useless relationships that never really go anywhere. They break up, they come together, they break up, they come together. So what had happened is, at the time when I met this woman, she had broken up with this guy and she was lacking rent and was about to be thrown out. So as soon as I proposed, even as she said, hallelujah, the heavens have opened for her. So it was, two desperados meeting, and of course it can only end in disaster. So that was a milestone. Because from there, of course, I hung around those 3 days. When you ask, what did I think? What did I do? I spent 3 days thinking about the various ways I could murder her. I could use a machete, I could put a knife into her, I could do. But then you realize that all those things are pointless. Best thing is to walk away and never come back. So when she came back 3 days later, I got out of that house and I went. I did not take, I only took my documents and the clothes on my back, and I went to Isili. That was a milestone. I did not want, and that was the thing that directly started leading me towards a life in the streets. After that experience, I didn't want any kind of permanency. So I stayed in lodgings. But the problem is, I couldn't now handle what had just happened. And so I doubled, tripled, eventually almost quadrupled what I had been drinking before. And now I moved from a functional alcoholic who could drink and go and search for resources to a dysfunctional alcoholic who just drank until either the money ran out or until I collapsed. I had to start living a cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper life. From those expensive lodgings, you go to cheaper lodgings, cheaper lodgings. Cut a long story short, in a span of time, I was pretty broke. One day I was going around the city, just looking for a cheap lodging, cheap accommodation. And I found a place which was cheap at that time, because I walked into a place and I was told a bed is 60 bob. Now those ones are those rooms, it's a room, it has 3 beds, a bed is 60 bob each, the owner makes 180 bob. But for me, that was a cheap option. And I said, thank you, Lord. Mimi nikaanza kuishi huko. 60 bob, you pay 1-2 days, baada ya siku mbili, you look across, you see that bed, they are sleeping 2 guys. This bed, they are sleeping 2 guys. Boss, what's happening over here, wana? Jamaa anakuuliza vizuri, kwani wewe ni fala? Mbona usilipe nusu utumie nusu, ulipe 30 bob utumie nusu ya kitanda? I'll translate that, man. Why don't you pay 30 shillings and use half the bed? There are places in this town that can shock you with the kind of life that happens. Now this bed has 2 bed sheets, 2 blankets. So, actually when you pay 30 bob, you take 1 blanket, 1 bed sheet. One guy puts his head, analalisha kichwa upande ile. The other guy puts his head this side. You use your shoes, you put them under your shoes under the mattress. They serve both as your pillow, and it is security so that they are not stolen. Eh? Because these are just places that are filled with to drunks and to drug addicts and that kind of thing. Now, I want to show you an economic slide for people who are going down this road of alcohol. For me, how it went. You've now found a place to sleep for 30 bob. So, if you have a place to sleep for 30 bob, now in this place where you are sleeping now, it's cheap accommodation, so you're no longer drinking expensive alcohol. You don't even think about kinataska. Now you have found guys here in these accommodations, wanajua changa, nini, so now you've started going to Madare. You go to drink pure stuff from Madare, but Madare has become cumbersome, so tukaja hivi tukachaga hata na hiyo ya Madare, tukaikunywa ya Madare, alafu tukaja mpaka hapa Isili, nikaja kujua a product which is the scum of all alcohol. A product, they call it karubu. And anybody, even the guys who drink changa, which is pretty despised, but at least it's popular. Karubo is the scum of alcohol. Karubo is a drink. Nobody serves you in a cup. Because even to the customers who now go to drink that, they are not worthy of being served in a plastic cup. You are that low. Because that thing is served in kasuku tins. The owners of Karubo bars, they go to places, they pick up those tins, those plastic mikebes of kasukus. And that is what they sell the drink to us in. So if mahali now, you are getting Karubo, and Karubo costs 8 shillings. 8 shillings, shilingi nane. Three of those mikebes are potent. You will get drunk. So basically you can get drunk on 24 shillings. You have a place where you can sleep for 30 shillings. Every that is 54 shillings. You smoke, but you smoke the cheapest brands. A brand called Rocket. It costs 50 cents. Rocket is those two kind of cigarettes you cannot smoke in one go at the whole thing. Hey, you na nyonga like 3 times. So you buy, when you buy for 6 bob, that's 12 of them, 24-hour supply. So the alcohol and the cigarettes is 30. The accommodation is 30. You're a guy who doesn't eat much. So food of 40 bob is enough. You probably eat 1 meal a day. Because you also don't want to eat too much, it doesn't interfere with the absorption of alcohol into your bloodstream, but you want to be high. You never notice that alcoholics don't like eating too much because they don't want it interfering with their level of highness. So you've now come down to a place where you require 100 shillings to survive. Slowly, from that, you no longer think about a lot of money. You don't even think about looking for 150. No. Once you have 100, you knows. But once you get into there, after a few drinks, you acclimatize and you stop. With a mind, you can go and live on the streets. So I'd always thought these guys have something wrong up here. And so the guys we hung out with in these bars, I never associated or thought that because they carry sacks on their backs or stuff like that, I didn't think they are street guys. I thought these are just guys who live in those slums that are near Isili, Kiamutisia, Madare, those kind of slums. So one day, we're at this place, I have 30 bob, I am not drunk, I didn't make enough money, so I'm not drunk, but I have 30 bob for the lodging. And a friend of mine, a drinking buddy, walks in, tells me, hey, you buy me something. I tell him, boss, man, I have nothing. Only 30 bob and it's for accommodation. Guy tells me, wait, don't worry, man. We'll sleep at my place. Let's kunywa this 30 bob. You know, I'm also thirsty. So I say, okay, let's kunywa. Kunywa the 30 bob, and at 11 o'clock at night, the Karubo place closes. So now, it's to leave. The guy puts his sack on his back, and we walk up. Anyone who knows Isili knows a place called St. Teresa's Dispensary. At that time, it was just being built. But next to it, there's a hardware that still exists up till today. I pass there sometimes. At this hardware, when we get to that veranda, the sack this guy has been carrying on his back, he puts it down. And I stand back, one. I'm wondering, what's with this guy? Kidogo he fishes out some cartons, he starts to tandika them on the ground over there. And I'm shocked, asking, boss, what's happening? Nini? And boss wana, wacha wasu tumefika base. Now we have reached home, unajua your alcohol just evaporates. That was my first experience. It was when I actually realized I was going to sleep on a veranda. You're in shock? Yes. You never thought it would get to this? Yes. But what are you going to do? It's 11 o'clock at night, it's past 11 o'clock at night, and you have nothing. So, better sleep. At least these guys, when here they sleep, they are still alive up to today. So, I said, okay, I'll just sleep that side of the wall. And the guy gave me a casaque, pushed my feet into them, a piece of plastic paper, nickered my head, and I slept. Now, chokoras are kicked out of verandas at 5:30. So as soon as it reached 5:30, yes, the watchman tokedi hapa, si kwa mama zenu, nini, a lot of food, you're waking us up. And you wake up and realize you are alive. Hala, okay, so a guy can sleep on the street. Now, the devil knows how to trap those who are already lost or losing it. Because when you're kicked off at 5:30 in the morning, the only open place, kwa Karobo kunafunguliwa at 5:45. So in the few minutes when you are packing your two things there, the only place you can go is the Karobo place. So of course, I castigated myself for a few days after that. How? Me? How can I sleep on the street? I was angry with myself. But a few days later, I was thirsty again. I didn't have enough money. I ended up on the same street. Long story short, I did a stint in the street. You sleep here 2 days, you go to the lodging for a bit, you sleep another 2 days, 3 days. Long story short, I eventually became a fully fledged street person. I didn't see the need for paying for accommodation. I had got into that lifestyle. And it happens gradually, but there I was. Once you get into being a full-fledged street person, chokora, it comes with a lot of problems. First comes the dirt, uchafu. You sleep on the veranda. This is, if it's rainy season, there is mud. If it is dry season, there is dust. So you are dirty. You sleep among other dirty guys. So in a short while, you are so dirty, you cannot go hustling anywhere. You can't go to hustle among decent people. So you join the street economy. You're introduced into the street economy. And I was introduced into the street economy. Somebody helped me purchase a sack. I got 20 bob and somebody showed me purchase a sack. Purchased a sack, and I was introduced into garbage collection. And I became a one-man garbage collection company. Because at that time, and even now, the garbage collection in Isili was not very well organized. The chokoras would go to homes, collect the garbage, find somewhere to dump it, and that's it. So what we did back then, you just go, you put your sack on your back, knock on this door, somebody gives you their rubbish in a small bin there for 5 bob, unaeka kwa gunia, mwingine anakupatia for 10 bob, you put in your gunia, hivo. By the time your bin, your sack is full, you've got 50 bob. Sasa comes the next part of the plan. Sasa ni kuchengana na city council uko Isili. You need to dump. You need to dump this thing. You can't walk to Dandora dumping sites. So you are going to dump it within the estate of Isili. And if you are caught dumping, nobody jails chokoras. They just beat you to within an inch of your life. So that's a dangerous part. But eventually you dump it. Now, the way you are dirty, a street person does not even have access to companionship of other people. Because of the way you look and smell, nobody wants you near them. So the only people you can go back to hang out with are the street guys. So you go back to the Karobo place. And all that became my life. And I lived in that life for long. But now look at the economic slide still happening. 50 shillings is now the only money that you make in a day. I've given you a budget already for what it took to drink. 24 shillings alcohol, 6 shillings cigarettes. So that 30 bob is sacred. That 30 bob cannot is sacrosanct. It cannot be touched because alcohol is the most important thing in your life at that time. It is all you live for. So you don't interfere with that budget no matter either it's for food. You'd better pick up dropped food somewhere, but you have your alcohol budget. So 20 bob is left. Your 30 bob you have expended out of the 50, 20 bob is left. Now 10 bob unashika, you go, you look, you rummage among, or just find anywhere dropped. There used to be some plastic bags, some green paper bags that got banned by the government some time ago, but they used to cost 10 bob. You just pick up one that has been thrown away. They were common. People used to litter with them the street sana. So you pick up a paper bag and you go to the back of those Somali restaurants. You give 10 bob to one of the members of the kitchen staff. You go behind the kitchen there and you give 10 bob. 10. And you give in your paper bag. These guys have got a cabin there. Akaka pipa ndio kanatupwa all manner of whatever is left from the plates. Kama ni ugali, kama ni whatever, ugali, macaroni, chipo, whatever is people have left over, that is where they dump it. Sasa wewe hiyo ndio unawekewa kwa paper bag yako. You remove the impurities and make a feast of what is inside there. That was our food. Being entrepreneurial, you don't maliza yote. Ukishiba, whatever is left, wewe na wewe you want a return on your investment, so unachukua hiyo karatasi, unaenda kuuzia chokora mwenzako yule hakupata nafasi ya kwenda kujichukulia. That was life. But again now, with that life comes so many problems. Let me just give you a typical day in the life of a chokora. At 5:30 in the morning, let's start from the wake up. 5:30 in the morning, you are woken up. No, scratch that. You are kicked awake because the watchmen did not give you the veranda to sleep on because they love you. These guys are only letting you sleep on that shop front because you are part of their security system. You are the alarm. If thieves come and they step on you guys, imtawika na watajua kuna shida. The first thing as a chokora you do when you're kicked awake is to shake the sack that's next to you. You shake this sack. If it moves, it is alive. If it doesn't move, whatever is in there died in the night. And the only thing you can do is one guy grabs the feet, the sack, the side of the feet, the other guy grabs the side of the head, na mnaondoa hiyo gunia mnaeka pale barabarani, pale city council itachukua. Maana you don't want to spoil the place where you guys you sleep. There are so many reasons. Chokoras die like flies. And there are so many reasons why. Exposure to the elements, the diseases, the bad food we eat, the drinks that they take, all this poison they are putting in this karubo and all of that. And sometimes I think even the lack of the will to live one. Because guys die like flies. If you don't have a guy dead in your base every week, a base is the community of chokoras in one particular spot. If a guy doesn't die in 1 week, oh, that is actually something big. Now, once you've done that, you now get off the veranda and go to the Karubu place. Remember, it's not like you who wakes up and goes to wash your eyes and what in your personal hygiene. Where is a chokora going to do that for? Where I would ask most people, even those who are watching me, have they even ever given drinking water to chokoras? So if they have never, where do they expect chokoras would get water, like to bathe their faces or etc.? So that is totally unheard of, You just get up, go to the Karubo place. If you had something left over from last night, you drink Karubo, ama mnachanganishana shilingi yako mbili au hiyo ngapi nini, you get something to drink. By the time other people are going to work, some of you are already drunk. Alafu when it reaches 8-9 o'clock there, you go to people's house, collect garbage, go dump it, and then because you cannot go anywhere else, you come back to the Karubo place and sit there to mingle with your fellow chokoras. But, and this I want to point out, because what I do is only related to the street man, not to street families. I want to point out the tribulations of the street man in society. Among the street families, there are 3 categories. There are the street children. All those kids that you see and many of you love, you will throw 20 bob to them, you will give them something, you are to chips, you are eating, etc. Those ones are okay with society. There is the women, chokoras, especially those with babies on their backs. Those ones, you will buy for a pint of milk and a loaf of bread. You sympathize with them. And then there is the male adult living in the streets. When he comes up to you na mandevu zake, when he comes up to you in his rags and all you can see is the grime on the surface, and your first reaction is to take off, scream, judge this guy long before you have even tried to understand this person. That's why I said in this conversation, I will try to demystify that guy, because I was one of them, and I know the rejection, that men living on the streets go through. It is a life that no human being should live, and yet those men on that street, they didn't fall from the skies. They are not the spawn of the devil. These are people who had families. They are fathers, they are grandfathers, they are brothers, they are sisters, they are brothers, they are cousins, they are etc. So why does society, once they are on the streets, treat them as though they are the plague bearers or something like that, the way they avoid them? Let me mention something. Government features you nowhere in its plans ukiwa mwanaume chokora mabarabarani. You don't feature anywhere. When government talks about the vulnerable, I was even during COVID, when people were contributing billions to assist the vulnerable in society. The vulnerable, according to society, is the guys living in the slums. I can tell you for free that the guys living in the various slums in and around Nairobi might as well be multi-millionaires compared to the life of a man living on the street. Those people there have access to water. Hata kama inatoka shilingi 5, they can changanisha hapo neiba watano na wanunue hiyo mtungi. Therefore they can become clean. They have a roof over their head. They are not living in the elements. Most importantly, they have access to companionship and interaction with other people. One thing the street man does not have. If a street man goes and stands by a newspaper stand where people are reading newspapers there, he will be quickly thrown away because people will think he's there to rob them, he's there to pickpocket them. They look at this thing and this thing can't read. I mean, when you look at it, it can't read, it must be illiterate, it must be just coming here to steal. Ondoka hapa. So the guy who is living in the slum is a million ways better off. He has access even to work. Now you'll take me and ask me, why doesn't the street man work? Understand, there are many things that, there is many reasons as there are street men, why street men are there. Some, like us guys, alcoholism, drugs, nini, got us there. There are men who are on those streets, products of the child welfare system in this country. You see all these children's homes that exist. About 85 to 90% of them do not have an exit plan. And therefore, a child is rescued as a young child, taken through, and it's not their fault. It is not the fault of the children's homes, but I guess that's the law. A child is taken from the streets, rescued, taken to Primoni, put in a street children's facility, and then just before the child turns 18, they are kicked out because the children's home has no nini for dealing with adults. So they cannot keep them there beyond 18. When they channel them out, what's the plan? This kid, probably because they were rescued from the streets when they were a bit older, they have not completed school, so they don't have an education. They have not exactly reached 18, so they don't have an ID. Yet they go back to the street. And there are many men I can show you in the streets, and even today we still deal with many men in the streets who came from children's homes. Now, the thing is, when they get into those streets and become dirty, they suffer another problem. At the attainment of 18 years and over, they are so dirty where they cannot, and they have no documents of their mothers or fathers, they cannot obtain an ID. Tell me what one thing you can do in this country without an ID. You can do nothing. You can't even register you cannot register even a SIM card if you don't have an ID. You can't get a job in this country if you don't have an ID. So that street man there is faced by the both things that he's so dirty, nobody wants him around him, he does not have an ID, and you are asking, in your ignorance, you ask, mbona mtu hafanyi kazi, mbona hatumii akili? Sometimes it is good to try to understand some of the situations that some of these guys, I am not saying all, but some of the situations some of these guys go through. Sometimes those men are not walking up to you because they need your handout. Some of them would just like you to humanize them. Simply, as a child of God, what does it cost you to just tell somebody, God loves you and has a great plan for you? Some of these people are not looking for your handout. They are just looking for a hand up out of their misery. Somebody to walk with them. Somebody to help them to get out of their current existence. They made mistakes, yes, and they went to the streets. They have paid for those mistakes, but now they wish to come out. Why can't we be the people who help them to come out? So that was the kind of life we lived, and as I told you, it is a hard life. A chokora will take, because there is no water to bathe. So what happens is, ze unakaa, mwezi wa kwanza, you get very dirty. You're full of lice. I mean, the places you sleep, the sack you are sleeping in, the guy next to you has got lice, everybody around you has lice. So you get body lice, you get hair lice. In a short time, you have lice all over your body. And maybe the first month, it's okay. We unakunywa kabisa karobo, na chawa zako zinalewa, unalewa, mnalala. Second month, now you are drinking lakini chawa hizi hazilali bana. By the third month, it does not matter how much you are drinking. These things have so crowded your body that they're not giving you space. Now that's the time now you are actually doing bodily harm to yourself. Unacheza guitar usiku mzima, you know how you scratch yourself, you are sweating, you have got maybe like 3 layers of clothing. You start putting wounds on yourself. Sasa chawa zimezidi. Now it's the day to go bathe. You buy your kaba of soap, you have to look for a tin, a mkebe. Get that mkebe, unaenda, you tafuta also some two pieces of plastic along the way to light a good fire, and you go to the river. Sasa hapo ndo unaenda unatoa, this mkebe is for boiling your clothes. Sasa unaenda unatoa nguo zako zote, you stuff them in this mkebe, put water, light a 3-stone fire there, and boil rice. I'm not shrubbing, boil rice. Kuchemsha chawa. Mwanaume mzima ambaye ako na akili hajarogwa. Ukishamaliza pale kuchemsha chawa, you wait, then as the chawa is boiling, you go and take, you also go get into the river, you wash yourself off kidogo, and then once they've boiled, things are white, you wipe them off your clothes, unavaa nguo zako tena, zinakuja zikikaukia njiani, and as you're on the way back, mas every chokora you know knows that you have bathed, because that day, everyone knows you have come from the river, but you have bathed. You know, it's a life. It's a life human beings should not live. And I lived that life. Until you see death, you are tired of this life. And eventually, at one point in time, you've seen so many guys who are dying that you don't want your life. Somehow for me, I always never wanted my life to end that way. On one particular day, a guy gave me some clothes, and I decided to go to the river. This is towards the end of 99. And I head to the river, I bathed. And I decided I would go home. I would retrace my way home. Remember, I had isolated myself from people. I had then gone on to lead my own life. Eventually, things had messed up. I had gone to the streets. So it had been almost 10 years. By then, I had been in the street almost 3 years. But I decided I would go. Not so much that these guys were going to go and make up, but more because I would rather go kill myself there. A loose plan, not too solid plan at the back of my mind was, when you get there, you can end it there, and then these guys will bury you. At that time, my father's last known address was on George Padmore Road in Kilimani. I wasn't sure whether he has moved. And I said, I'll go. Imagine how my mind was that even after bathing and putting on those clothes, I didn't have bus fare, yes. But even if I had had bus fare, I don't think I could have caught a matatu, because at that time, my mind was so beaten down, chokora thinking, where you can't even get into public transport. I walked to Kilimani. I got there, I went to the gate, and I knocked and asked the watchman, do the Kilangas still live here? He says, yes. Musa Kilanga here? Yes. Musa Kilanga is my kid brother. So he goes and he calls Musa. Now it's been 10 years. I left my kid bro at about 9 or 10 years there. The guy who comes out of that gate is a huge fellow, man. At Institute of Fort Lauderdale, she finished her studies, got married, got a child. She lives in Illinois, Chicago. And what about the firstborn? The guy who was bembelezwa like something else hapo mbeleni. Me, I'm a chokora. We're only 3. There is, at that point it hits you just how much life has moved on. Your siblings, your younger siblings have moved on. There is no space, nowhere in any conceivable universe where you can tell me that even as the firstborn, I would ever have been able to say anything in front of these two. As a what? Mini chokora. But that only hardened my resolve. See, remember I told you at the back of my mind, I had a plan that I could end it all. Because for every addict, for every person going through some really tough places, there are people who play with this kind of thing of, if it really gets bad, then I have one last bullet. I'll just take my life, I'll just bring this suffering to an end. I had that in my mind. Now, I can't tell my brother I'm living in the streets. So I cook up, concoct a story, or I'm living in some low-class area, finance in my neighborhood. I need to buy some rat poison, when I go home to take my life. So we hung out together at around 7 o'clock, almost close to 7 o'clock. We start walking back We have walked back. We are near home there, and he goes home to bring me something. But where we are at, there's a kiosk there. So I ask for a glass of water, a cup of water, and they give me the water. So when he's gone, I quickly tear these 4 sachets. And let me tell you, I was convinced I was going to die. I had seen a guy drink, those things were called red cat. I had seen a guy drink the same thing in the streets. You know, guys would get tired of life. And I'm trying to kwambia, me, I'm tired. In fact, you guys encourage him. You end it. Mtu akinunua red cat. I'd seen a guy drink 2 sachets of red cat in the morning. He was not there. So I was sure 4 would finish my life. So I mixed them, held the empty sachets, and I waited for him to come. My brother came back, and I drank the concoction, tossed the things at him, and told him, now bury me. And let me tell you, I was convinced I was going to die. I had seen a guy drink, those things were called red cat. I had seen a guy drink the same thing in the streets. Mtu akinunua red cat. I'd seen a guy drink 2 sachets of red cat in the morning. He was not there. So I was sure 4 would finish my life. So I mixed them, held the empty sachets, and I waited for him to come. My brother came back, and I drank the concoction, tossed the things at him, and told him, now bury me. This kind of thing that you'll just drink poison and you collapse and die is a creation of the movies. It has nothing to do with real life. Because me, I drank and tossed those, the jug down, it breaks. My brother gets angry and he really starts screaming at me. He wants, yes, you've never been home. You've just come home. You have built a bridge, and promptly you have burnt that bridge. And come to bring your drama into people's lives, people you rejected 10 years ago. And, you just come and started creating drama for them again. So he got really angry and he gave me a piece of his mind. I collapsed on that roundabout. But next morning, I woke up. I know my biggest regret was that I was alive. But then the excruciating pain that I was in, I knew this, if death means this much pain, I want nothing to do with this death. I must seek help. I was dirty, I had thrown up on myself, I had soiled myself. But now at Adams Arcade, there are some friends from days when I used to be in Upper Hill School, days from my youth when we used to live in Golf Course. I have a lot of friends there in Woodley, Adams Arcade, Woodley, Apple. So just behind Winners Chapel over there, there's a guy, a friend of mine called Joshua. And Joshua, they lived there for ages. I guessed that maybe they would still live there. So I got up, this is before 6 o'clock. So I got up, I half crawled, half walked, behind up from the roundabout, past the Uchumi, behind there, and to Kina Joshua's place. Watchman takes one look, bang on the gate, watchman takes a look at me and tells me, "Toka na uende." That guy, no, bana. You go tell Joshua, Solomon Kilanga, if he does not want to see me, I go. And I thank God and I thank Joshua for friendships formed in school, because that he did not, as soon as the watchman heard I know his boss's name, akaenda kumuita. And this guy came and he helped me. I told him my story, went, took me to their servants' quarters there, blacked out. He called another friend who was a doctor. We had also been in school together. And those guys didn't even involve police. I was treated in that servants' quarters of theirs for the next 3 weeks. But at that point, you see also the other painful realization. I've just seen how my siblings have moved on. I have attempted suicide. I am the epitome of failure because even suicide I have failed. How much lower can you go in failure? Any person can stand on a stool and hang themselves. Yeah, you have failed even to kill yourself. Now the guys who have rescued you, who are helping you, are your former classmates. These guys weren't necessarily brighter than you. But now one is a lawyer, one is a doctor. You, their former classmate, you are a chokora. It is when it starts dawning on you, when you start figuring it out in your head, when that you are the primary victim of all your bad choices. That all those that you blamed did not suffer from your bad choices. That all the denial you gave over the years that you didn't have a problem doesn't help you. And at that point, you realize it is best to quit the denial. Stop the blame game kabisa. Accept and start looking into your own role in your tribulations. But the thing is this, at that point, nani atakusikia? So once I was okay, they gave me some money, I went back to Isili. We promised that we would keep in touch. I went back to Isili. Long story short, that was maybe November, December of 1999. By December of 1999, I was back in the streets. So Christmas 99, I was in the streets. I was on a veranda. New Year, ya mwaka wa 2000, I was on a veranda. When guys were talking about the millennium bug and all that, those kind of things, I used to hear the chatter around me. But again, you could not even go to a newspaper stand because we're ni chokora. I was 34 years on 8th January the year 2000. You are 34 years. You are living in the streets. Wewe ni chokora. Umejaribu kujiua, umeshindwa na hiyo. You have no one and nowhere to turn to. You burnt all your bridges. There is nobody who would want to hear you. Life for you is over. So the only thing you can do is wait for death. In whatever form, it is going to come to you. And when I speak that story, part of my story, where I was there, I hope that it reaches the viewer out there. That no matter how bad and how broken you think you are, no matter how many millions of pieces your life has been shattered into, that little that is left is enough for God to work on and rebuild you completely. Maybe you have been shattered that much so that you can be rebuilt into the best version of yourself. For me, that is where I was at that point, 34 years old, broken, and with no hope for a future, with no hope for anything. In February of that year, I stopped taking an active participation in my life. I stopped garbage collection. I stopped putting a sack on my back to go and collect garbage. I went and slept up kwa veranda, and when we were kicked off in the morning, naenda kulala pale kwa karubu. If somebody brought me something to eat, I ate. If somebody brought me something to drink, I drank. But I didn't very actively participate in my life because I was hoping that then, through neglect of myself, death would find me. And when I was that broken, God, now I think, saw something he could work with. Remember, for me at that point, I had no concept or perception of God. And believe me, I would not have believed in any kind of God at that time, because how would I have believed in a God at that time, going through that kind of life? But in retrospect, I realized maybe God had to break my arrogant little self that hard so that he could use me for what he wanted to use me for. So towards the middle of February, there's a guy we lived with on the street. It's called Kamau. And Kamau one day comes and tangazas to us, nimeokoka kuna Yesu. There is Jesus, I'm born again. You know, my first evangelist was a chokora. He comes and tells me, he starts telling me about Jesus. He starts telling me about God. He starts telling me about, how he's gotten saved. And, I'm looking at Kamau. And I'm wondering, first, we almost beat him. Out of exasperation. What's wrong with him? Can't he look at the reality of where he is? How can you conceptualize of a God who cares for you? You are here with your other guys, you are dying like flies, and you're talking about God. And I kind of figured, ini bangi. Because Kamau loved bangi. And, when a guy has been smoking dope for too long, akina kuchizi, maybe these were now just the signs ya kuonyesha he's going mad. So I didn't take him too seriously. But Kamau was insistent. By the way, Kamau would come every day. He talks to us about God. He tells us that he's met this pastor. This pastor has talked to him about God. But slowly, there were subtle changes about Kamau. And we started, I started desiring these changes. But every time I talked to Kamau, he would tell me about going to meet this pastor. And where you put stories of Mungu hapo, me, I wanted nothing to do with that. So, of course, the story comes back to square one. Because it's, Kamau, I'm looking, I want what Kamau has. But Kamau is telling me, let's go to the pastor. Atakuombea. For me, that's X. So we stop it at that. I looked at Kamau. I saw all the changes in him. I saw all the things he dumped. By the way, at Ayo Karobo, he stopped drinking. He was even cleaner. Kumbe used to go to a place, bathe, nini, come back, John. He was even cleaner, looking healthier. He stopped Karobo, he stopped cigarettes, he stopped that. But one thing Kamau hadn't stopped was bangi. And I knew as long as Kamau was still doing bangi, the day he leaves bangi, I'll believe there's something about what he's talking about. And one day Kamau left bangi. I followed him like for 3 days. Unamfuata hapa na pale, he's not smoking it secretly. Yes, I knew, I wanted to find out what Kamau had found. But problem was still that story. Come, we go to a pastor, he'll pray. That story. So we nganganad. Now I'm feeling so good that I'm doing this show in March. Because on March 26th, in a few days' time, will be exactly 22 years since the day I came off the street. It was on 26th March 2000, 22 years ago. It was a Sunday. And Kamau came to me. I was in those Karobo bars. I remember I told you I wasn't taking an active participation in my life. But the night before, a guy had left me something like 20 bob. So in the morning, I had money for Karobo, for alcohol. So nilikuwa mlevi. By the time Kamau is coming at 7:30 hivi, he comes and tells me, but come, we go see the pastor today. On that day, I don't know why particularly, but I felt rage against all these things that Kamau was talking to me about. Maybe because I knew I couldn't attain them, I don't know. But I decided I would go with Kamau, not to listen to what they have to say, but to put this pastor who talks to Kamau in his place so that he stops giving Kamau this nonsense na Kamau ache kutusumbua kwa Karobu, we drink our drinks in peace without easy story. In fact, the drink I had, I gave my kasuku at the bar, I told them, hold this, I'm coming back. Tukaenda na Kamau. So we get to some place, Isili on Muratina Street there, and get into a gate there. And when we walk in, first of all, the first thing I noticed is there are some chokoras I knew from the streets. But these guys, it's a Sunday, these guys are here, they are wearing two suits. They are smart. You know, chokoras, when they go missing, you don't really worry about them. Maybe they died, maybe they migrated to town or wherever, pastures were greener. I didn't know at that time that the man I was meeting was Bishop Absalom Dungu. Me, I just knew he was a pastor. And so he comes out. He's not impressive. Short man with a very wide smile. And I start attacking him. I am very aggressive with him. I start asking him about this nonsense he's been giving Kamau. Why does he give Kamau this nonsense? Kamau will not leave us in peace. What is these lies he's telling Kamau? You know, I also want to irritate him because I want him to kick me out and I can show Kamau this is just another human being to ondoke. But this guy, he's calm. He's patient. And all he keeps telling me is, God has a good plan for you. I rant, I rave, he tells me God has a good plan for you. Hai, guys, I seen this guy, maybe kuna kitu anasema. As we were talking now, I figured a place, I was tired of him just answering me like that. I looked at that, the Bible. At that time, I didn't consider it holy or anything. So I just told him, I don't want any more stories from you. Can you answer questions regarding my situation from that book of yours? That's why I advise Christians to know their Bible. Bishop knew his Bible. He picked up his Bible. Any question I asked him, he opened book, chapter, and verse and answered me directly. Mpaka unaenda kujiangalilia. This thing can answer you apart. And I asked him, so can this God of yours take away my alcohol? And he says, yes. And I'm eager to know what I must do so that the alcohol can go. He's asking, what must I do? He tells me, Neil, I pray for you. I lost it. I wondered, what is wrong with this guy? What simple tone does he take me for? How can simple prayers work? And he'll pray for me and alcohol will be gone. I was so mad, I wanted to walk away. But then again, out of the corner of my eye, I had noticed. These chokoras I was telling you about who are smartly dressed, they were making some tea there. Hapa wanapika chai ya maziwa. Naona wanapaka mkate blue band. Delicacies you don't get in the street. So I thought, why not hang around, at least I have breakfast, to compensate for the time these guys have wasted of mine. And so when they said, oh, we pray for you, I said, okay, fine, let them pray. See, by then, that tea will be ready. So, fine, I knelt down. They prayed, and they laid hands, and they spoke in tongues and what. At one point, my knees were hurting, man. I was even saying, wachana na hii chai, man. I wanted to get up and go. But mercifully, the prayers ended. So you get up, and these guys start asking, hey, welcome to the kingdom, my brother. These ex-chokoras, but they are now born-again guys. So, hey, welcome to the kingdom, my brother. You wonder what kingdom? You feel zilch. I couldn't feel anything. But you want to be polite. So, okay. And of course, you want to drink the tea. So we had the tea, and I wanted to go. But again, I'm mentioning these two things. They are tiny things. But they are things that happen. If they didn't happen, I would not be here. I will not be speaking with you. But there were tiny, minuscule things that you would not even have given notice to. Kidogo, when we finished the tea and I wanted to leave, one of those guys comes and tells me, hey, tumekuchemshia maji ya kuoga. Hey, I hadn't bathed for long. But for how many years had I not bathed with hot water? And now somebody is offering me some hot water. Hey, I said, yes. So I was taken, bana. My clothes were taken. Those ones went to be burnt there. Unasikia zikilialia cha huko twa. And I was given bathing water and some new clothes. And whenever you hear me for the ministry I do, and I ask men to come and contribute their clothes, it's been 22 years. I've worn many clothes since then. But I was given when I came out of that bathroom, I was given a green pair of slippers, a gray pair of trousers, a white shirt, which should have zile za cufflinks. Since there are no cufflinks, it just falls all over here. But I have never forgotten the feel of those clothes and the way they made me feel human. I don't know, because maybe, you know, in the river you just bathe with cold water. Right? You've had a hot bath, nafikiri imechoma chawa zimetoka, and then you come into these clothes, and I just felt human. And I was feeling in a more affable mood, and the bishop comes. I still think he's a pastor. He tells me, let's go to church. And I think he's been so good, so I'll go to church. I have asked these guys who are with him here, where does this guy preach? Wameniambia he has a church in Kayole. So I know if we go with him to Kayole, if we disagree, I'll come through those slums, I'll go to Soweto, then cut through those other slums of Sinai and ETC, come ombaing Changao, the way back to Isili. So no problem. So he gives me 20 bob, tells me to go shave. My hair was a bit long. I pocket the 20 bob, and I decide, this is what I'll come back to drink, so I won't shave sai. Kidogo he comes, him and his wife, Mama John. She's called Mama. We called her Mama John, and we get in the car. We don't go to Kayole. Kidogo mi naona gari imetokea Thika Road. Kidogo, I was told we are going to Kayole. Kidogo, guys passing Utalii. Yeah, bathed in hot water that day. I'm looking down to the river where I usually bathe. Tukapita. Hey, vehicle comes, it passes Thika. Now I'm getting a bit worried. Umse ananipeleka wapi? All there till a place called Kabati. Turned off on the left, and then we get to a church. And now is when I realize he's not just a pastor. Because I could see the way the people received him, the other pastors. You can see the man in charge is here. And so tukapelekwa ndani, that's when I knew and started hearing now him being referred to as bishop. So we get into the church. He goes to sit at the front. Mimi napelekwa pale kwa raia. And I watch the proceedings. Do you know, my life had become so abnormal that the abnormal seemed normal to me. Because when Bishop got up to speak, he spoke of a guy who had been through so much problems. In his own words, he said, he has come with a man who has been where the rubber meets the road. And then he proceeded to talk about a man going through so much problems. At one time, I almost looked around the church to see who else did he come with. Because me, I couldn't see that these are my problems. Honestly, you've never had your problems explained by somebody else, but you start thinking, this can't be me. And then he called me to the front. And he tells me in Kikuyu, Heana Wira. That means give a testimony. Now, first of all, I didn't know the testimony, so I asked him, Heana Wira is what? And he told me to give a testimony. And I was really, really mad. Because first of all, I was seeing, this guy has just been bad-mouthing me to the whole church over here. He's just been telling them things I didn't even want to talk about. And then now he's expecting me to stand here and corroborate his story. So I'm wondering, he's told me to speak. If I don't speak and then he tells me, Bas, walk back to town. We are in Muranga and I have only 20 bob in my pocket. I might not speak, this guy can dump me here. So I chose to speak, and my first testimony, my first ever, what I'm speaking to you right now, was coerced, forced out of me 22 years ago, otherwise I would not have been speaking here with you. Because when I sat there, when I took to speak there, I started realizing the abnormality of my life. Like, for example, I stood in front of the guys, and I said, this morning, when I came out of my sack, and all these people opened their eyes and looked at me, and I realized they didn't come out of sacks, they came out of beds. there was an abnormality between my world and their world. But I spoke, and somewhere in the middle of that, of what I was speaking. For me, there were no drum rolls. Coming to God, there was no drum rolls or anything like that. In the middle of what I was speaking, I knew. I didn't suspect. I knew I would never touch alcohol again. And so we finished at Kabati, we left, and of course now coming back to town, the doubts are assailing me again. Hey, sasa nitaenda kulala barabarani, how will I manage not to sleep on the road without something to drink? But by the time we got back to town, Bishop, kumbe what had happened is, as far back, this is the year 2000, as far back as the year 1996, he had been living in Isili. He's a bishop. He noticed the big amounts of men who are roaming around in the streets, living on dump sites and that kind of thing, and the fact that nobody wants anything to do with these men. And so one day he felt he's going to do something about it. One day he just asked us, another street man, do you want to go to change your life? Instead of a handout, the guy had asked for 5 shillings to go and eat. He asked him, do you want to go to change your life? And the guy said yes. Bishop didn't hesitate. Next to his house, he had a small room where he used to do some silk screen printing. He took that guy without even bothering to notify his family first and followed what the Bible says. When you see the hungry, feed him. When you see the naked, clothe him. When you see the poor wanderer, provide him with shelter. Most guys cannot do the last part of provide with shelter. They may do the first 2 parts, feed, clothe, but are unable to do the provide with shelter. He gave him first water to bathe, food to eat, a place to stay, a roof over his head. But more so, he continuously gave him the word of God. Because where we are and in this work we do, we believe it is only God who can make you as whole as he originally meant for you to be. So he gave him the word of God. Within 3 months, this guy, the first guy was called Muturi. Within 3 months, Muturi, you could not believe he had been a chokora. And that is how GLC, the place that I run, that is how it started. I'm not the founder. This was started way back in 1996. I am actually a beneficiary, but I now run it. The founder has since passed on. It's now in my hands. I now run it, but I'm also a beneficiary of the same. So from 1996, he brought in more men from the streets. He brought in men and others, and now fast forward to the year 2000, that's how I came in. So I started living at the center. Kidogo, God started giving me back everything that I had lost. Well, first of all, I started out hard. For me, I started by selling trinkets. I borrowed 500 shillings from him. I bought some to chains and small mirrors and stuff like that. I started hawking those around. It was more to prove to myself that I could actually have 10 shillings in my pocket and not go to drink. One day I went, it had been in the center for about 3 months. And I read in the newspapers and I saw a guy that I knew. It's called James Gadaya. I saw his story in the newspaper. I saw it indicated where his offices were. He was handling some case somewhere. And so I went, he was in Hurlingham, his office was in Hurlingham. This guy, we were classmates in high school. Now he's a big-time lawyer. And I went, I saw him, and the first thing he asked me is, hey, Kilanga, where have you been, brother? You left the country. I told him the truth, but I didn't leave the country. Yeah, I was in the streets too. And we talked, and this guy helped me. He built for me a Catroli. Smokies had just come out. So I started selling, you know, seen these two Smokies and what, I started selling that. And a long story, I moved on from there, kidogo, got some funding, started up a butchery. Afterwards, I quit the butchery. I decided I would go, because I was helping the bishop also in this work. of bringing others' treatment to the center. Because what I must tell you is, living that life had showed me a life that no human being should live. I could not see how I could come out after living that life. Somebody had given me a hand up. And then I just leave all those people who are there and who genuinely want to be helped out of that situation. So we were working with the bishop on this. But I was also doing my own things, nijitegemee. Eventually, one time I sold that butchery business, and as God would have it, it so happened that there was one preacher who had come, and I was told to take him to preach in Kabati. The same Kabati where I first went and gave my first testimony. I was told to take him to preach. This was an American preacher. And when we were living there, we started talking. He asked me whether I know about computers. I explained to him I know nothing about it. Remember, now this is the year 2001. I am 35 years old. I know nothing about computers. Hizi vitu zilinipita huko kitambo. He tells me, come to my office tomorrow. He tells me where the office is. I turn up the next day, and this guy happens to be the owner of Diamond Systems. Diamond Systems in 2000 and something hapo was one of the biggest computer companies in this country. He hands me over to the managing director, tells me it's about October 2001, tells him this guy, mfunze computers, at the end of 3 months, give him a computer, arudi kazi yake kule rehabilitation. This is God returning two things. First day I walk in, I meet the guy who is assigned to teach me. I ask him, I'm fascinated. There's a arrow, a hourglass, the thing keeps on going round. Hey, I ask the guy, what's this? Guy looks at me and tells me, you don't know what this is. You'll never know anything about computers. Guy, I thank him for those words, because that fired me up to learn all I can about computers. Diamond Systems used to open at 6 in the morning. I used to turn up at 6 in the morning. It used to close at 9. I used to leave at 9 at night. By the end of the year, long story short, when guys were getting a bonus, I was also given a bonus and told to the next year I was given a job. Worked in Diamond Systems until 2002, went on to head the technical department. 2003, by 2003, I had met a lady there in Diamond Systems. I married her in 2003, eventually left Diamond Systems, went opened my own computer company in Thika, eventually got into partnership with some guys who were doing Mtumba. One of my partners who were doing computers with was in America. And he came across these guys, or was friends with these guys who are involved in the rugs industry. The rugs industry supplies maybe 85% of the stuff they pick to for industrial rugs, but that 15% they supply as Mtumba here to Africa. We joined forces with those guys, and they brought Mtumba here. I challenged them to bring Mtumba here. We started selling in Uganda. Long story short, eventually that company, I was their African representative. I was head in 6 countries here in Africa. So God brought everything back. I had a car, I bought land, a house, I had kids, I had a wife, I married in church. One thing I'm very proud about, I never had a committee for fundraising for a church marriage. I paid my own money for my own wedding. I'm so proud of that. But that is how God can elevate you. But here's a snag. This should have been a happy story. That's where it ends, yes, and things are great. But the problem was, when I came out of this is the problem of addiction. Whatever you are fighting, if you do not deal with your underlying issues, the root cause of your drinking, you will remain in that vicious cycle of addiction. Because when I came out of the streets, remember I'd led a life so horrible that no human being should live that life. God had gotten me out. When I came out, I first embraced religion, not God, religion. Why I say I embraced religion is that I allowed myself to do certain things which the Bible does not advocate for. For example, forgiveness. For me, that wasn't part of the deal. I'll go to church, I'll clap, I'll dance, I'll tithe, I'll be a good Christian in other ways, but for me, the hate I have, the lack of forgiveness I have, there are some people who have wronged me, those ones I can't forgive. And so I kept my bitterness and all my issues, the baggage I had been carrying on certain issues, I kept them inside me. But because also I'm a man, and I equated success with money. The first few years of my life, getting out of the street, I had to make money. So you want to rebuild yourself. And I spent the first 5 or 6 years rebuilding myself. By the 6th year, I had everything. I had no time for negativity anywhere. You know, by the 7th year, when everything looked like all was back in place, 7 years after I came off the streets, I walked myself right back into a bar. And I drank like a person possessed. Let's just say those 2 years of my life are something I would rather just even not remember too much about. But 2 years later, towards the end of 2009, I went back to this same center that I ran. And then it was under the bishop. I went back, and this time I decided I would find out what is my problem. Why do I drink? And I was able to sit and start introspecting my life thoroughly. And in that introspection, I was able to see certain things from angles of other people that I had not been able to see before. The only problem and my only regret is that by the time I came to my senses, my mother had long died, and I could not go and make my apologies. So part of why I tell my story is to help people who are out there going through these things, to try to look at these issues, learn to see things from other people's perspectives. People could have done things that were meant to assist you and help you. You misread them, and they ended up, you perceived them wrongly, you ended up having problems just because of that. So let's go back. You've had my life from 7 years going on, and it's a pretty flashy life. At 7 years, you're in Consolata, you live in Westlands. What is 87 Raptor Road today? It was a classy address then, it's still a classy address, it was where I lived. Later on, you go to Nairobi Primary. Nairobi Primary in the 70s was a posh school. You chauffeur-driven, the areas you live in, you look well. What does society see from that picture? Society looks and sees, everything must be perfect there. Chauffeur-driven kid, parents are wealthy, nini. But nobody's riding. Nobody's walking in the shoes of that individual, that child, me at that time. Because whatever society saw, and we still see that today. And if a kid goes wrong or gets into experiments with drugs or alcohol or something, we will all say, kwani mtoto akona nini? Mtoto amelipiwa fees, amepelekewa shule za maana, amefanywa. Parents, money doesn't answer everything. So let me go back to my own story. My life is very nice from 7 kuendelea. At least what you hear of it. Let me go to 0 to 7. I was born to a 14-year-old girl. My mother was 14 when she gave birth to me. She had just finished what was then called CAPE, Kenya Advanced Primary Education. She gave birth on January 8th, I think by January 16th or so, she had gone on to high school. I was brought up by my grandmother, and I knew my grandmother as my mother. To me, she was everything. To me, she was my mother, my friend. She was everything. My grandmother was not rich. She lived in a mud house. We lived in a mud house in the village. But the thing is, I think the first 6 years of my life were the happiest years of my life. I remember the muddy slopes we slid down when there was rain. I remember the two little black beetles we chased in the rivers, the swimming we went, the fairs, catapults we went shooting birds. It was, let me tell you something, a child who is loved, whose belly is full and they feel loved and accepted, they thrive. Kids don't know much about poverty, money, material things. It is adults who bring that nonsense into their world later on. For me, I felt loved. I was a thriving kid. Up to the age of, say, about 6.5 or going towards 7. Now, as I lived my life, remember my mother also was living hers. So she went to secondary, went up to Form 4. In those days, they came out and had like 2 or 3 jobs waiting for them. So she was not only bright, she was also beautiful. She joined East African Airways as an air hostess. And soon the girl who had been ridiculed for giving birth in the village at a young age was flying the world. And there is where she met Captain Abubakar Kilanga. Short time later, they decided they would get married. And when they decided they would get married, we were told about it in the village. And I even have pictures. We attended, there was a nice wedding. We attended at the old Mayfair Hotel. I have pictures of myself there at that wedding. But even at that wedding, I had no connection to these people. I did not know this was my mom. To me, my grandmother was my mother. So around just before getting to 7 years, they come back. This is after the wedding. Maybe they had gone for a honeymoon or whatever, but they come back. Then one day I'm called and I'm told, this is your mother. Same day I'm told you're going to live with her. So take any almost 7-year-old kid and forcefully uproot them from where they love and know is home and give them to what they consider a total stranger. You have ruined something in that kid. There was no preparation, no nothing. So if I start tracing my problems back, probably they may have started somewhere around there. This is a kid from the village. I had never spoken a word of English. Even if they had had a word of English in the village, they would probably have translated to my mother tongue Kikuyu. So this is a kid from the village. There is not even an albino in the village, so you have never come across anything that's different from your color. And you are suddenly thrust into Westlands among a white neighborhood. Culture shock, boss. You see the white kids, and the way they are playing, they are having fun, king of the castle, na vitu kama hizo. You cannot join them because of your limitations. You cannot express yourself to them. You can't communicate with them. So you just sit at the back, look at them, and wish you were back in the village. You miss your playmates. You miss those guys you went to the river with. You miss those guys you fired catapults in the village with. And you start to resent the person who has brought you here. That is my biological mother. Abubakar Kilanga, her husband, was Muslim. One of the first things was to be taken to Mpisha and circumcised. That's not the tradition back in my home, so now I'm experiencing different traditions. As soon as I was healed, it was Consolata Primary. Now this famed Consolata I keep on talking about, I went there without knowing English. There's a whole lot of difference between going to Consolata when you're a fluent English speaker and going there as a person who doesn't even know the English language. First of all, now Conso was also, this is the early 70s, Consolata was also primarily a white school. So you're thrust into this. You stand out. Two main reasons. One, you're black. Unaonekana from far, you are different. So that makes you stand out. But two, and the more obvious one, is that you're a Zuzu. You can't communicate. So people will come to probe and poke. This thing doesn't talk. Does it? If you push it, does it? You know, kids are bullies. You can't communicate. So you are bullied until you are... Whatever comes out of you, because whatever will come out of you is Kikuyu. To the Wazungus, this is garbage. What is this? You know, so they poke you, they prod you, they what. And you have a teacher guiding you around there, but you really, all you feel is a lack of self-esteem. Here in Westlands, when I came, this is the first place I ever saw a house with a man dedicated to cook. You know, in the village, we just ate what was put in front of us. Sometimes you washed your hands, sometimes you didn't wash your hands. It was okay. But now here, I have found a man dedicated to cooking. That was my first cook that I ever saw. But now, all that is exciting. But fact is, you are too unrefined to be sat on the grand table there with the new husband. So you sit in the kitchen with the houseboy, with the cook and the maid, and you are there being taught to use a knife, a fork, how to fold your cutlery, stuff like how to arrange your cutlery, how to fold your linen and all that. And all you feel is like you're an animal being taught to perform tricks, because when you ate with your hands, ulikufa. So I was a kid with too much confusion, but my self-esteem was completely battered. And I think the only escape part I had kidogo was when in 1977 the East African community broke up. Tanzanians, Ugandans were kicked out of the country, so my parents relocated to Tanzania, and I was taken to Nairobi Primary for boarding. Now, Nairobi Primary was a very posh school, but coming from Consolata, okay, so you know, you feel, now you're in charge kiasi, and you start, but deep in you, you still feel unworthy, you still feel inferior, you still don't have much self-worth. And so, when in Standard 7, it was at the same school, we got that opportunity to drink. Remember me telling you what I felt the first time? And then asking you, why would a 13-year-old kid feel so empty that they would need a drug or alcohol to make them feel good about themselves? So now you know. That was the reason why. When at the end of time I dealt with my issues and I could look at things through my mother's eyes, all that resentment I had, you see, that's actually a very small thing, but had been blown out of proportion. I had blown it out of proportion in my own mind. Because first of all, if my mother, for example, at the age of 14 when she gave birth, if she had chosen to stay in the village, would have ended up 2 village idiots. But in her wisdom, she decided to go to school so that she can search for a future for her bastard child in the village. That was a very commendable move. I should have been full of praise for that. Instead, I considered it abandonment. And when she finished school and went on to become an air hostess, she did not even do that job for a very long time. She instead chose to terminate that job and marry Abubakar Kilanga, a man, because they later divorced, a man who maybe she didn't even love. But the fact of the matter is, he was the only man who would give her child, would adopt her child, give him a name. He gave me an expensive education. He gave me the exposure that has enabled me to thrive in certain aspects of my life. So everything she did for me, not against me. When I think that I was taken to Consolata and thrown in there with Wazungu kids just so I could be tested, it is foolish thinking. And the fact is, if I didn't go there and learn in Consolata, I probably would not be able to communicate the way I communicate in English. So that was a blessing. I thank my mother for it. It was just too bad that by the time she passed on, I had never yet come to my senses on these things. That's why I talk to people, so that they can get a chance to make amends with those that they may be thinking have done wrong against them, or to seek for the help that is necessary. Now, that story moves me now to what I do. Because of those experiences, immediately I started working with the bishop. Then later on I went 7 years later, I went back to Kakunywa. Remember, first of all, in these 7 years, I was actively bringing in guys from the streets, and we would help them with the bishop. In all those years, the center was at Isili. And then in 2018, Bishop Dungo passed on, and after he passed on, even me had said, not the only chokora left who came out of the streets. So I also abandoned the project. We left it to his son, John. John ran the project for some time, but John is a pastor, a very good pastor, but this wasn't his calling. And later on, he came and told me he would close it around 2019. So I thought, fine, we'll continue with it. And got friends around to support these. Friends have brought in their networks. This is a ministry that is not, we're not funded by donors. We're not funded by any formal organization. Most people who work at our place are volunteers. But our main thing is to go out onto the streets, bring those men who are willing and stuck in addictions off the streets into the rehab center. We have a 4-stage process, which is rescue, physical removal from the street. 2, rehabilitation, which is primarily done through the Word of God. 3, reconciliation. Remember that these people, they didn't fall from trees, as I said in the beginning. We try to reconcile them with their people. But if that doesn't happen, then we go to the final stage, which is reintegration. Reintegration involves, we keep them at our place. We have a halfway house system where guys go to work. Tunatafutia kazi za mjengo. But even kazi ya mjengo, when a guy goes, if he's earning 600 shillings a day, then we allow him use of 100 shillings because he's eating and sleeping at the center. 500 shillings he will save. 40 days of working, that guy can have saved 20,000 shillings. Now with that 20,000 shillings, we buy him a starter kit, bed, a mattress, some 2-3 suvurias, 2 cups, nini, a starter kit, and move him to his own house. In our area there, houses are, small rooms are like 2,000 bob a month. So the 20,000 is enough for him to go out, start life as a normal, contributing and productive citizen of this land from being a chokora. Over the years, we have about 2,000 guys who have graduated through the program, but we want to be able to expand this program. This thing of alcoholism, drug use, and the boy child in Kenya, we are going to either continue to bury our heads in the sand, and one day it will have serious repercussions on us. The street man that we will continue to ignore and hope he goes away and continue to stigmatize him. Remember, potentially, I use this word carefully, he's the most dangerous, even among those street families. Because this is a man, he has nothing to lose, and society will continue to hold him in that kind of contempt. making him a potential danger. But these are our brothers. We can reach out, we can help them. The greatest lesson I learned on involving addiction was that fact that if you don't deal with your underlying issues, you will forever be stuck in a vicious cycle of addiction, rehab, addiction, rehab, addiction, rehab, addiction, rehab, that vicious cycle till your dying days. Until you are ready to face what is the actual issue that makes you go into this drinking. Then you are never going to, because you can remove the alcohol for a temporary time. Enda rehabilitation, ukae miezi sita, there is no alcohol around. But when you come out and whatever, because it's all up here, whatever was bothering you up here returns, you will go back to the thing that eases the pain for you. So about addiction, that's the biggest thing I've learned. What keeps me going? My friend, you know, I said the first thing is I lived that life. I was an arrogant kid. I was a person who, maybe like many Kenyans, I didn't understand this community of the street people. So when you come across these kind of things, well, I want to continue because I believe, I'm not saying that every man living in the street is willing to come out. No. I said this before. In our normal human society, see, there are thieves, there are looters, there are rapists, there are what? In our normal society. So the same even in the street community. Okay, wale unasikia they will watashika kinyeshi watupie watu angeta nini, those the misfits are there, just like they are there in the normal society. But there are people there who went down there, whether through their own fault, whether through other circumstances. But right now, all they are begging for is a hand up out of that life. And I will always be ready to give them that hand up because somebody gave me the same. I pray, and what I am trying to do right now is to see whether we can have the same kind of setup of GLC replicated in several parts of this country so that it starts dealing with the alcohol problem, and the street men problems. And I'm very intent to leave an impact. By the time I leave, I want to see a lot more of those men in better positions. And we can see the results. We have a lot more of them who are speaking out. We go to churches, we speak to them, we try to demystify this. We are not just about having that rescue center in Roiro. I also go out to schools. I have been to a lot of boys' schools just to speak. Because the problem is, as men, we keep our pain to ourselves. We don't let it out. That's the way we've been parented. When mwanaume aliagi nini, shut up, suck it up, you're a man, you shouldn't cry. We grow up like that. And then when we are under pain and pressure, we cannot let it out. And eventually the pressure bursts and we find ourselves with all this abuse of alcohol, abuse of drugs, nini. I am trying to talk, to get men spaces where they can sit as men and talk. Even at GLC, if you visit there, you'll find there's a place where men just sit. Men from the outside, men who are going through the program, just sit and share. So anybody who would like to assist us, please come join us. First of all, visit. That is the best thing first you can do. If you are within Roiro, you are within Nairobi, visit. We are just on the Eastern Bypass. If you want to partner with us, for us to help bring solutions to this problem, we have a pay bill number through which you can contribute to us. The pay bill number is 891-300. Pay bill number 891-300. The account number is GLC. GLC. You could call me on 0715-874-094 for any inquiry. And you could, if you have a group of young men, or you have a place you would like somebody to come and speak to people you care about who might be losing it, who might be going down that path, we have a team which goes out and tries to make a difference. All of us, tuungane mikono. This is our wound collectively. Let us be the solutions provider to this problem of ours.